What's poppin' people, it's your boy Zero, aka Black Natsuki Subaru, bam! And we are here with another ReZero reaction. So, we will be reading ReZero Arc 9, Chapter 39, the final line. Damn, all this shit's rhyming, holy shit. Now, I am very excited because we are getting very close to catching up. I'm not gonna hold you guys. You know I'm bricked up, you're bricked up. Let's be bricked up together as we read this new chapter. Don't forget to leave a like, share with your homies, and subscribe. Hit that bell icon just so you can stay updated on when I make videos, content go live, and all the good crazy shit. Okay. This is a remix, holy shit. Anyway. Responding to the order without hesitation. Oh wait, I already read that. Fuck it. Aldebaran, who had been waiting in the background, stretched out its wings. Alter. Wait. It had expressed no confusion in regards to... Oh, alter. Okay. I'm like, what? It had expressed no confusion in regards to that alias. By the way of the Book of the Dead, the update in his intentions had already been communicated. The alias origin was also as easily understood. The alias origin was also an easily understandable but trivial matter. Without room to put his opinions on that alias into words, a white light, the dragon's breath, was unleashed. The divine dragon's dragon husk. The tremendous might of its breath demonstrated the maximum capabilities of its specs and proved to be a fine article that even the Sword Saint, Reinhardt van Astria, had just barely managed to neutralize. And on the current battlefield, with the Sword Saint absent, nay, on the area that could not even be described as a battlefield, the breath was unleashed, raising it to the ground. Everything natural, everything man-made, and most notably, all life consisting of not just plants and animals, but humans too, was erased. The range output of the dragon's full-powered breath reached out to several kilometers, and anyone unfortunate enough to be engulfed by that light of ruin that arrived without giving any warning would cease to exist, lacking even the time to register pain. And now, passing the order to Aldebaran, Aldebaran had performed the deed. That deed. As commanded, 12 o'clock to 3, scorching down the areas signified by directions corresponding to the positions of a clock, it reduced all who stood in its path to naught. In all likelihood, the lives lost could not have been counted in just the hundreds or the thousands, but numbers well in the realm of tens of thousands. Well done! Laying his eyes upon that which could only be described as tyranny, the act of brutally trampling all in one's path, the suspended Roy Alphard snickered in amusement. Strung up by his arms bound, Roy placed the soles of his free feet together, thus cheering as he clapped not his hands but his feet. But while nobody aside from Roy contributed to that noisy applaud, none of the members present there appeared to criticize Aldebaran's actions. Present instead was delight, understanding, subordinates, and fear. All were his henchmen, even the ones who had no say in the matter. Thus, basking in their gazes, Aldebaran looked up to the sky. With the dragon's breath unleashed, not only was the land scorched, but signs of its influence appeared in the sky and surrounding atmosphere as well. With the clouds torn asunder, and the rain and the wind that were supposed to have occurred banished from the land, the traces of the dragon had been deeply engraved, ravages of the dragon's rage, so to speak. Naturally, there existed no living beings that could not fear the ire of the overwhelming existence that was the dragon. Because there existed no beings that could fight back against a rampaging dragon mad with rage, it was an ironclad rule that when faced with the dragon's fury, all forms of life would keep their heads held low, attempting to conceal their presence and waiting for the storm to pass. Therefore, the likes of birds and bugs promptly approaching the ravages of that rage was far beyond a natural. Looks like a miss. Seeing a flock of birds assembling around an area scorched by the breath of a certain to ascertain the damages, Aldebaran muttered words that would fade away in the confines of his mouth. The vast majority of animals were straightforward and faithful to their instincts. If that was being distorted, and they were acting in a manner dishonest to their instincts, it was proof of some sort of unnatural interference. That was to say, it was proof that the existence enacting the unnatural interference had survived. Ascertaining that, Aldebaran would next. Muttering that, he unwrapped the poison drug pack within his mouth. He gulped down a deadly bane, and then target 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Fire, alter. Subsequently, upon returning to his restart point, he oriented himself towards the next area and instructed the dragon to trample it down. Target 6 o'clock to 9. Fire, alter. Target 6 o'clock to 8. Slight adjustment. Target 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Target lock to 7 o'clock. Adjust range output. Breath to 80%, 70%, 60%, 65%, 65.5%, 65.5% confirmed. 714. Having been told that this way of doing things was too clean by Ye, Aldebaran revised his thoughts. Gaining awareness of the pride he had been blind to, he earnestly examined what was truly necessary in order to accomplish his objective, and arrived at an answer. The no-killing restriction. From the moment Aldebaran had decided on the removal of Natsuki Suguru and resolved himself to abide by his own purpose of creation, he had established that the minimum obligation he would need to uphold. From this world, where many had already been lost, with even she who had embodied the sun having disappeared, he would not cause anything more to be lost, so he had decided. But by overly adhering to that vow, Aldebaran had subconsciously placed a shackle on his own authority. In order to uphold his vow that he would not take the life of anyone, he had ended up imposing the same binding to the journey itself. With Aldebaran's authority, with his territory, the events that transpired in the repeating world would endlessly be made to have never happened until that matrix was finally marked with a full stop. In that case, so long as the records balance out to no killing by the end, he would not need to worry about deaths during the process. By keeping that conclusion outside of his consciousness aware, Aldebaran had unwittingly levied that shackle upon himself. In order to finally remove it, Aldebaran continued to waste time in futility. No. Without Ye's words, he might have still been none the wiser. I knew that Nissan was trying to use his divine protection to whittle us down. The problem lies in his meticulousness, in the unlimited hand of cards. It really seemed like there was no way to avert that, but no longer bound by that shackle, Aldebaran surmounted the challenge with brute force. Nothing about it was difficult. His pursuer was borrowing the eyes and agency of insects, fish, and other small animals in order to get a grasp on the movements of Aldebaran's group and enact various forms of sabotage upon them. But considering what he conjectured to be the extent of effectiveness of his opponent's divine protection, even if his directions to the animals had an immediate response akin to telepathy, it was not as absolute as something like brainwashing. Every single time, their pursuer would have needed to directly issue a command. And, in order to enact that, the commanding pursuer himself would would have needed to be stalking Aldebaran's group while maintaining a reasonable distance. Although the brute force of the dragon's breath, he had deduced the position of their pursuer. Narrowing down the area using the clock positions and measured the distance with the depth of the breath. Given that we're doing, he's speaking. Oh, I'm done. Narrowing down the area using a clock positions and measuring the distance for the depth with depth of breath. Given that we're doing something erratic, he can't afford to withhold his hand in order to grasp what happened. Then, the act of playing his hand is proof that the Nissan made it out unharmed. But what about when he doesn't play his hand? His hand, leaving the leeway to mobilize the troops he had allied with his divine protection, would have served as proof that he had vanished from the world. With that ascertained, Aldebaran had regressed his territory, closed in on the direction of his pursuer's presence, measured the distance, and finally managed to identify the opponent's position with utmost precision. Of course, during that process, if the mountains, forests, and even some towns, a great number of lives had been sacrificed. But absolutely all of that had been made to have never happened. By balancing the records in using his territory, the casualties outside of Aldebaran numbered 0. No, Aldebaran's death was not counted, so the casualties numbered 0 total. Combined with when I was selecting the members for the tower, 1,347. It really gave me one hell of a time. Wait, what? Combined with when I was selecting the members for the tower, 1,347 times. There was nothing more exhausting than someone thought to have already been dealt with pulling the carpet out from under him yet again. In that sense, it would have been no exaggeration to say that the pursuer, Otto Suin, had given Aldebaran more trouble than either the Sword Saint or the Sword Demon had. If it had been his suggestion to send Amelia to Aldebaran and Wilhelm to Ye at the royal capital, then the damages he had caused the group amounted to far more than just Aldebaran's 1,347 deaths. Of course, it was precisely because he had judged him to be such a large threat that Aldebaran had spread no cards in his hand, thus succeeding in stirring up that formidable enemy. Alsama, over here, over here! Waving her hand, Ye beckoned to Aldebaran and the rest from below. In accordance with Ye's call, Aldebaran perched down on the ground, and Aldebaran hopped off his back. Halfway up the mountainside, behind Ye, who had arrived first at their target point, was a green internal affairs minister strung up to a tree, and the ground dragon lying on the side with its limbs tied up. Perhaps because the ground dragon had so fervently struggled against the steel thread bindings, its pale blue dragon hide was stained with blood, and even now it continued to desperately writhe while panting in exasperation. As expected, the loyalty of the ground dragon's quite something. Thinking back, the current generation's for trash was also like me. What? The idea to make an example out of it flashed through my head, but it seemed like he's the type to just become even more stubborn instead of breaking. So, I decided not to. How was Ye-chan's judgment? I think you got the right answer. Besides, there's no point in a warning if you can't even see it. As Ye greeted him, while tilting her head, Aldebaran scowled within his helmet. In his vision, present above the writhing ground dragon, the strung-up internal affairs minister, Otto, was cocooned in steel threads from his head down to the tips of his toes, which of course included his eyes and mouth. It was a state in which he could not do a single thing. By nature, a single steel thread was so thin that one would need to strain their eyes to even ascertain its presence, since they now appeared as an opaque tool of restraint. He cannot imagine just how many had been wrapped around. Unable to get a glimpse of any light, unable to even make a peep. It'd be possible to form communication with the outside through even just breathing, let alone whispers. And so, I wrapped his entire body with no gaps, save for a single airway connecting us to his ankle. With this, he'll be too busy focusing on his breaths to cling to survival, to have any leeway to fill them with intent. I know this isn't about you getting revenge, and instead just proof that you're taking precautions. After all, this Nissan would actually be capable of plotting something against us if we were to give him any room to speak. I never operate on my personal grudges. Yae-chan isn't that bad of a shinobi, you know? Placing her finger to her cheek, Yae was in quite a good mood as she made a cutesy smile. Given how much complete and utter hardship Otto, the harassment specialist, had put them through until now, she would have likely had a substantial amount of resentment built up, even if she had borne no personal grudges. To begin with, the industry leaders of carrying out harassment and conducting wars of attrition against enemies were none other than the shinobi. So, now that you finally dealt with that, I guess you'd be in a good mood, yeah? You really are a gentleman who can't understand a woman's heart, Al-sama. It feels good to pin down an opponent who persistently made attacks of the nastiest kind in a sly, exhaustive, relentless manner, you know? Isn't that pretty much exactly what I said? But the number of things is that you're finally acting as the monster you truly are, Al-sama, without a shred of concern for your trivial humanity. You fully embrace the monster within. For that reason, even something like having Balsama fling me at the sky was nothing so outlandish. Seems like you've got your fair share of complaints with that strategy. As Yae correcting Aldebaran's mistaken impression, she did not bite into it. She added that bit onto the end. With the modification of how he utilized the territory, he had located the pursuer's whereabouts. After completing that, they had needed the quickest means to reach their opponent before he could discern their intentions. That had resulted in having the airborne Aldebaran hurl Yae to the target position. He's welcome. I'm just so curious to see where this is gonna go, because I know one spoiler about Otto, but other than that, I'm just like, what is Otto gonna do? Like, he's pretty cooked right now, but it is Otto. Otto has been known to get out of some very perilous situations. Let's see. Where am I? On top of being crude, it was a plan that had greatly imperiled Yae's life. But because the opponent was located in the mountains, which provided a great amount of buffering material, Yae, with her ability to create cushioning with her steel thread technique, was deemed to be the most suitable candidate for it. Even though this duty was most suited to someone who won't die from Even though this duty was most suited to someone who won't die no matter how far they're hurled away, there was no way we could entrust the Heinkel-sama in his current state. The old man-shaped hole might have bored through the mountain while the old man remained alive, and well, but you're right about entrusting any important duties to him with his condition right now. Between Heinkel and Felt, a considerably deadly rift had formed. In response to that issue, he had worked out a countermeasure to stabilize it for the time being. But that but that had incurred Aldebaran's displeasure, and was nothing more than a temporary band-aid solution. Because it was the type of problem that could resurge for whatever reason, Aldebaran and Ye had decided that it would be for the best to not touch on it for the time being. Anyhow, finally, it's checkmate. With Otto's movements and resistance sealed, Aldebaran looked up at the opponent, whose current state ought to be dubbed a silver chrysalis, and keenly felt the victory he had attained in this round of the game, which had gone on now for a long time. However, the opponent Aldebaran was playing against was not just Otto. It was a multifaceted bout against many challengers on a kingdom-wide. I don't know why I keep like misreading. I'm like looking so far ahead because like my brain is like, my brain is moving faster than like my mouth is. Let me see. Just because he managed to make it through a single round successfully did not mean he would continue to carry that around as a source of satisfaction. What the heck is this? However, the opponent Okay. Above all, in order to ensure that they would never make a comeback as a challenger, he would need to be thorough with their elimination. Though, you know, even if I cut away his eyes, ears, tongue, and limbs, I'd still technically be obeying your orders, Al-sama. Yay. Fine. Al-sama's so scary. To inflict wounds beyond any hope of recovery, thereby forcing withdrawal from the front lines with only their lives intact. Doing so would be naught but a hollow pretense. For Aldebaran, the no-killing restriction was not something so flexible that he could say he kept it so long as nobody died, and it would be troubling if it was. That sort of thing was tantamount to declaring the world peace could be achieved by cutting off the arms and legs of everyone in the world. Hence, Aldebaran would not rob Otto Suin of his eyes, tongue, arm, or legs. Instead, that which he would take from him was his reason for fighting. Roy, I'm relaxing the curse mark's functionality. It's your time to take the stage. Roy! Oh, wait, I just read that. Every inch of his body constrained, Otto Suin, with certitude, heard the pronounced voice of the opponent looking up towards him. On merely one point, Aldebaran and the rest were mistaken about the efficacy of Otto's divine protection of soul of language. The soul of language, namely, that which was called voice, was the reverberance of sound. Those reverberations would always touch Otto's body. Oh, should he be within range of its reach. Even if his ears were plugged, the divine protection of the soul of language did not translate sound that entered the ear. It sensed and picked up on the reverberations of intent that touched the entity named Otto. Therefore, what a roundabout strange coincidence, isn't that, Oni-san? Even though both Lei and Louis missed out on eating Oni-san despite desiring to in Priscilla, in the end, you've been set up on the dining table before us just like this, so it would seem. The voice of the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony licking his lips, Roy Alfard. Wait, so he's gonna eat his memories. Not his name though. Was also detected by Otto as a thing of certainty. However, to much frustration from the depths of his heart, there was no longer anything Otto could do. He had still been detecting the voices in his environs due to divine protection of the soul of language, but with his mouth obstructed, his limbs restrained, and now obturated from even transmitting his will, Otto was hopelessly powerless. What are you doing, Talati? Please, stop! Or stop! Please stop! He heard the painful beseeching of an agonizing Fufu immediately below his hanging feet. For the moment, it seemed Aldebaran and his group did not intend to inflict any further harm onto Fufu, or much less take her life. Hence, he wished for Fufu to quietly wait for the storm drifting through to pass. That was his utmost desire at that moment. The rest? Of a voice that fell short of being voiced. Otto's heart concerated in trepidation for his comrades not present here. Amelia and Ram, Petra, Melee, Rem, Klein, Roswell. He had heard that even people of the Felt camp were cooperating. They would surely come up with some ingenious plan. Had it been possible, Otto wished to give a serious blow to the opponent with his own hands, even on Garfield's behalf. Moreover, for the captured duo of Subaru and Beatrice. How sad. How sad, Oni-san. How painful, Oni-san. But we'll treat those cries of agony, altering in joys and sorrows together, all together, and give them love. After all, this world is gluttonous drinking. Gluttony! In Lento, he sensed the polluted, violated appetite of gluttony drawing near him, creeping close to him. Without any means to resist, Otto accepted it. There was nothing he could do besides being chewed and digested. Thus, for however long, Otto Suin continued to pray, continued to wish, continued to dream. For his own final stratagem to fall into place. Well now, let's eat! Thank you for the treat! With the efficacy of the authority of gluttony invoked, the hanging Otto Suin was devoured. The deed was unaccompanied by any befitting effects generated. No shimmering visual. Sorry, Jack. We're still going. Nothing so flashy or gaudy occurred. In only quiet and solemnity. The feast dished up onto the platter settled into the stomach of an ill-mannered diner. What had transpired was merely this commonplace meal. Although I barely saw anything just now, it truly feels like foul play. The feeling of tension in the threads vanished in an instant after all. Her voice, laden with unhiding repugnance, Ye whispered while touching the rings that had sent forth the steel threads. What her words suggested was that the opponent in bind, Otto Suin, his resistance in order to escape from the constraints of the steel threads had disappeared. This was evidence of the efficacy of Roy Alphard's eclipsing manifesting. On top of that, we still remember that Nissan. As promised, you only ate the memories. Seems like you seems like you really held yourself back. What's with that? So short on gratitude and wonderment. Just so you know, separating just the name and the memories and chewing is pretty tough, you know. It's trouble like sifting through the grilled ingredients in between a sandwich without opening up the bread, you see? Don't care. Don't do it and you die. And that's the end of that. Separate and eat quickly and cleanly. Aldebaran snored it as Roy. Aldebaran snored it at Roy as he spoke of his authorities' hardships in front of Otto Suin, limp and motionless, whilst entangled in the steel threads. In reality, Aldebaran had no intention of carrying out Roy's advocation of what a high deed it was. Should he blunder, he would simply die. His soul scorched by soul scorched by the effects of the curse mark engraved on his body, bound by an oath with Aldebaran. Of course, it would be a problem for Aldebaran were Roy to die at this time, so he did intend to redo everything instead of failure, and search for a way to ensure Roy did well. Al-sama, as for that Sin Archbishop, isn't he getting a bit cocky? If you're going to restrain his actions with the effects of the curse mark, then rather than appeasing, persuading, and winning over his heart, wouldn't you have always made him abide more suitably, with lesser strings attached? Engraving a curse mark isn't a light bulb as you were thinking it to be. To begin with, the curse mark's bound by oaths. There's a risk for the engraving party as well. The opportunity for engraving a curse mark is limited to exactly one time in someone's entire life. It's a trump card to make the kinds of people who won't ever listen take it seriously. Whoa! Whoa! So Tsuru can't go do that to others. Or at least Roswell can't. Man, that's crazy. That is crazy. Alright, let's see. Ye whispered into Aldebaran's ear, who pressed her forehead whilst answering. As the name suggested, the engraving of a curse mark, a kind of curse art, was a deed that had existed before magic and curse arts branched into separate sects. The nature of it was rather close to the origin of magic. Speaking further of the impression given by the curse mark based on its impression, the one who taught Aldebaran how to engrave a curse mark and the nature of them will likely bestow the plight of a half-day-long tedious lecture about it. For you to be so kind and use that valuable opportunity for us? Very nice, so nice, quite nice, how very nice, really nice, it is nice, as we can believe it to be nice. Gluttonous drinking, gluttony! By this point, that is love, isn't it? What? What are you saying over this adorable, sexy, and devoted maid that is Ye-chan? You prefer the nasty teeth Sin Archbishop? Al-sama, you infidel! Right back at you. Stop matching paces and linking up with that Sin Archbishop. Aldebaran winced at the combo of the blabbering Roy and the yabbering Ye. Holy shit. On Ye's end, she likely had no intention of getting along with Roy there, or even getting along with him for that matter. But the way she utilized anything to sway Aldebaran's heart was truly befitting of a shinobi. On the other hand, Roy bore the attitude of being conversable and comprehending for a Sin Archbishop, and had almost bestowed upon him that misunderstanding. However, he mustn't misunderstand. For Aldebaran, both Ye and Roy were equivalent, used in his goals, the targets of fear and potential backstabbing him, dependent on the situation. That was... Roy, don't get too cocky. Start talking. What the hell? Or what was the Nissan you just ate scheming? That's what I fed him. That's what I fed him to you for. A chilly warning was issued by Aldebaran, who kept Roy contained while well within attack range. His restraints unfastened. Oh. I know what it is. I'm just like a tiny bit sleepy. I had a long night. But we're not stopping yet. We're gonna keep going. I may just have to take 5 or something, but we're getting through it. I mean, I have been recording for like 4 hours? 3 hours? His restraints unfastened. Roy had gotten his fractured limbs restored by the healing magic of Aldebaran, but neither had he gained the trust in the slightest, nor was he permitted freedom of action. However, in the direction of plan. Wait, in the direction the plan would now head towards for the endgame. It was not realistic to carry a tied-up Roy along. As an example, should he ever seek to rely on Roy's authority as gluttony like he just had, to keep him turned face down as a card that could not be used immediately would be some excessively maladroit handling? Not in the slightest loosening his vigilance towards Roy. What was necessary was further arrangements for a policy to subdue Roy. Fortunately, the curse mark was sufficiently fulfilling that duty. Though, it would be nice if he could tell us something useful. As she spoke, the vigilant Ye turned on her slender figure, tightening the invisible steel thread to keep Roy in check. It had been none other than Ye who had disapproved of utilizing Roy's authority until the very end. And while she did welcome Aldebaran's declaration that he would unshackle himself based on her advice, she still fervently insisted that he free himself from the chains that were the no-killing restriction itself. In reality, if Aldebaran did actually call off the no-killing restriction, as she had insisted, and freely made use of the life or death power he had over his opponents, his objective in the end, in and of itself, would be accomplished rather quickly. To do that, all he would have to do is have Aldebaran shoot out its breath in all directions, never allowing an enemy to draw near. However, Aldebaran refused to do that, and instead, he insisted on adding new options. That of permitting death as part of the process and making use of Roy Alfard's authority. As a matter of fact, this was the implementation of a forbidden technique, that of proactively utilizing a Sin Archbishop's authority. It was an act that could not be compared to Aldebaran exercising his own authority, which occupied an unmerited position, so to speak. Those inherent evils, the authorities that had given rise to a great number of tragedies and sacrifices until now, to make use of them for one's own purpose, simply because it proved convenient. Likely, outside of Aldebaran, that was a trespass that only a single other individual had perpetrated since the dawn of witch factors in this world. Ultimately, that was the extent to which such conduct crossed the line. If he could not attain results proportional to the mindset he had committed, there would have been no meaning in his decision to go against the sun. So, let's hear it. We deliberately ruined your opponent's life. You're not gonna tell me that's nothing. What? Hold on. Wish you'd not rush us like that. It seems you're misunderstanding, but even we can't all of a sudden comprehend absolutely everything about the one just eaten. Things that have been known since the beginning don't really spring to mind unless the scenario deems it necessary, you know? Same as that. I ain't gonna tell you twice. Yes. We're saying we understand. Let's see. This Onisan was more abound in life experience than expected. So even if we were a bit surprised. After making a plethora of excuses, Roy concentrated on recalling the memories of the freshly eaten Otto. Roy was probably commenting on a mix of the many ups and downs in the life of Otto, who possessed the divine protection of the soul of language, and the extraordinary quantities of voices he had come to hear. However, there was a sudden pause in Roy's tasteless words, incurring Aldebaran's suspicion. Unmistakably, it was proof that he had struck a memory that caught his attention. What is it? What'd you find? Haha, it seems we were more careful than expected. There is a foolproof force scenario in which he was compromised. Foolproof. a safety measure to defend against any foolish mistakes. As soon as Roy's lips formed those words, a terrible chill ran down Aldebaran's spine. Not a countermeasure for an oncoming assault, but a countermeasure for after he was compromised. If Otto Suin had prepared such a thing, then it would be happening at any moment now. Yay! We need to hurry up and... A withdrawal from the premises, or a regression of the situation via suicide. As two possible options came to mind, Aldebaran mobilized before deciding on his counterplay. In a sense, it was successful, and in another sense, it had led to failure. That was... It is a pleasure to meet you, Aldebaran-sama. The voice of a girl struck Aldebaran's earlobes, as if it were a surprise attack. The interloper had appeared in quite literally the blink of an eye, and by making an entrance without having given any preface, his instincts did not even have the time to sound the alarm bells. The blue-haired girl, having altered her appearance and garments since the time in the Valakan Empire, was not something he could bear the sight of. It was something he only realized right after he had caught sight of her waving the skirt in her maid outfit. That instant, his mind was rapidly threatened by the name, existence, and nature of that maid girl. With her name and memories having been eaten by the authority of gluttony, the girl's name had been erased from the register of Odd Lagny, where the names of all life were engraved. With that having been regurgitated due to the malicious intentions of bizarre eating, that which Aldebaran had disregarded as something that would manifest no meaningful damage, now ruptured through his mind. Forcibly overwhelmed by an impact that compelled him to recall her existence, Aldebaran, who was supposed to have shouldered a fate that would not permit his thoughts to ever come to a halt, had said, "Thoughts left behind in the dust." "Al-sama!" As Jade promptly raised her voice, she reached her slender arm out towards Aldebaran, whilst glimpsing those white fingers. In the corner of his vision, Aldebaran found himself unable to move, and in that immobile state, during a single second for which he had been dispossessed of his thoughts, the situation progressed. That instant, Aldebaran's body was detached from the space it had occupied up until a moment prior, and thrown out into the sky, basking in a ferocious wind. The sun, for which he had ceased yearning, cast its glaring radiance, searing Aldebaran's black eyes as he fluttered through the air. Alexa, stop. What the hell? That was so weird. This was now do or die for the Aldebaran party, a critical juncture that had commenced without any forewarning. Thus, on the struggle of the Grand Mogulate Geyser, on the battle to decide the fate of the world, here too, come, the curtains now rose. She. Good chapter, not enough Hangul. Oh my god, dude. So, like, I knew he was gonna get his shit eaten. That I was aware. I was aware. Okay. Now we're almost caught up, boys. We're almost caught up. So we're gonna read the first passage of chapter 40, Flash Remnade. Then I'm gonna take a little break. I'm gonna get some food. Gonna like relax, let my mind recoup, and then we're gonna start reading again. But we're about to hit it. We're basically on chapter 40, guys. We're on chapter 40. All right. Chapter 40, Arc 9, Flash Remnade. Oh god, Rem is so fucking hot. Oh my god, she's so fucking hot. Having fallen victim to Roy Alphard of Gluttony, Otto Suin was forcibly removed from the battlefield. As one blessed with the divine protection of the soul of language, the man who had accumulated the highest level of mastery in history, had done exactly as he had proclaimed, humiliating Aldebaran's group, the enemies of the world, and inflicting great suffering upon them. That was why the conclusion of his lonesome battle was brought about by a ruthless imprisonment that left no opening for counterattacks, leaving him completely helpless. His words were sealed, his actions were sealed, his tricks were sealed, his wits were sealed, every weapon in his arsenal was sealed away, and finally, even the memories that defined who he was were stolen away. Thus was how Otto Suum was utterly defeated. When Aldebaran's group resolved to seal him away with such overwhelming force that gave no time to plan on countermeasure, even Otto found himself powerless, unable to resist. Because it was impossible to predict exactly when and where his opponent would launch a counterattack, he was unable to construct a trap zone using his signature divine protection. And so, there was absolutely nothing Otto Suum could have done upon being attacked, his last resort merely being a desperate struggle in the event of an assault. He had simply left instructions for the Zada bugs to fly off en masse so that his location would have been revealed in the event he was defeated. Al knew Rem before they met in the Empire, before Gluttony even ate her memories. There's no doubt about it. And this has been your boy Zero, aka Black Natsuki Subaru. Let me see how long this chapter is. It's decently long. Decently long. Alright, we're gonna pick back up in the next one. So, this has been your boy Zero, aka Black Natsuki Subaru. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, share with your homies. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well so you can stay updated on when I make videos, content, go live, and all the good crazy shit. So, I'm not gonna hold y'all. Catch y'all in the next one. Until next time, peace.